Hey guys, so I created a new opening sequence for my videos and I wanted to kind of show you how I did it and that I am messing around with Blender to hopefully use it now and in the future to enhance my videos. I'm going to try to keep this video pretty quick, so I'll do a lot of fast forwarding and such, but I'll try to emphasize the key effects and tricks that I used to help make this sequence. And then afterwards I'll show you the new sequence that I created using Blender. I thought that since I spent all this time on Blender and that it was fairly interesting, maybe you guys would be interested in seeing it too. And if not, I kind of understand. So first off, I want to tell you that Blender is completely free. You can download this right now and do everything that I'm doing, following along. You'll definitely want to watch some tutorials on how to navigate and stuff so that you can understand more fully, since I'm going to try to make this fairly quick. But Blender is really cool and you should definitely check it out. It's fun just to play with. So Blender always starts out with this cube, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. And you could do that by selecting the cube, pressing X, or delete. I then add a sphere, and this is going to be my kind of black hole portal thing that I use, that I have used kind of in my videos before. I then scale it and size it so that it has that neat little oblong ellipse look that I've used before. Alright, next thing is you're going to go to the shaders, and then you're just going to create a new material, and I'm going to go ahead and just call it portal. I'll probably have a couple more spheres, and this will just kind of help me know and identify it. At least this, not texture, but the shader. So I'm going to go ahead and just make it completely black. And you can see in these other these pre-renders that it takes that color. So then I go to the pass index and I create one. And this is important to create this sort of hole or masking effect. So definitely don't forget to do that. Alright, the next thing is to add a plane. And this is to add an image to it. So just go to meshes and plane. Then I rotate it and scale it how I see fit. Alright, to add an image texture to this plane, I need to go into the shading tab and turn on nodes. So use nodes, so you see these nodes that show up. And these get a little tricky and kind of confusing to use. I definitely don't have it all the way down. So I delete the first one, go to textures and image textures, and then I could just go through my files and find an image that I can attach to it. And I'm doing it right now, but unfortunately when I did the capture software, it's a new window, so it's not captured. But I'm basically scrolling through my files and finding the image right now. And that's what my mouse is doing, is it's just kind of floating around. Okay, there I got the image. I connect it to the output node, and boom, there it is. But it's sideways, and that's, easily fixed with some rotation. So for whatever reason, the image just uses up the entire plane, so it'll be kind of warped and distorted. But luckily, I can just throw a reference image up, which unfortunately I can't use for rendering the photos, but it's a good reference because it shows it in its native aspect ratio, and I could use that as a reference to fix the plane. Once I got the ratio about right, I just set the scene. Alright, to get the desired portal effect, I need to create a new layer. So I just go select a new layer, and this one is going to be the other side of the portal. So I'm going to just call it other side. I then create a new collection, and since this image of Disney World is going to be in the background or in the other side plane, I'm going to move it into this collection. So collection 2 is going to be on the other side of the portal. Alright, since Disney World is going to be the other side of the portal, I'm going to go ahead and do another plane and put an image of Disneyland on it to be the front side of the portal. So I pretty much do the exact same thing I did with the Disney World photo, with the scaling and resizing, and then using the reference background image. Alright, now I want to make sure everything is working and this portal effect is going to look alright. So I then set the camera up so that I can render a quick image. So once I get the images in frame, I then resize the portal so that it takes up the size and as much of the image that I want. And then I quickly set up the render options. For the effect that I'm going to do, it needs to be in the cycles render option. So right now it's in EV, so I switch it to cycles. And then I go to the view layers, and then I set it up the material index. And that's where that 1 that I put on earlier for the sphere shading is really important. And then I render the image. So because I have the 2 layers, essentially 2 images are rendered. So now I go to the compositing tab to sort of tweak things. So I select the use nodes, and right there we got the view scene layer, which was the first layer, and it is connected to the composite. And right now we don't see the composite image, so I can actually add another node that'll give me the opportunity to see what I'm working on. And there's another way. You could kind of pull up just another window, but this is kind of a fun way to see it while having these nodes on top of it. Now that I can see my image, I have to add a new input, which is the other side layer. I then need a mix node to put them together. And when I first connect the images to the 2 inputs on that mix node, you only see 1 image that is showing, and that's because right now one of them is overlapping the other. But I can sort of change the factor, and it gets kind of a transparent mixed look. Luckily, because of the material setting and the way that I set up the render, I'm able to connect this node to the factor, and we can see that there is now a hole where the sphere was, and we can see right through the Disneyland image into the Disney World image. Pretty cool, right? So as cool as that is, it just isn't enough, so I'm going to go ahead and add some particle effects to it. When you first connect them, they're just kind of like falling because there's gravity, so you got to change that up in the settings. So just go to field weights and change gravity to 0. Alright, now I need something to kind of attach to the particles, because right now they won't show up as anything, they're just sort of reference points. I just add another sphere, and I'm going to use this as the particle, or at least one of the particles. I then go ahead and I change the surface to an emitter type. That way it generates its own light, which can cause pretty cool effects. And then of course I pick a color. Then select the object that has the emitter on it, and then go to render, and then select render as object, and then you could select the object with the dabber. Then I pretty much just tweak some settings, make them smaller, add numbers, and do whatever to however I see fit. And you can just toy around with this option and find what suits you. Here I just smoothed the portal just to see if it'd change any of the particle effects at all. So at this point I kind of like what the particles are doing, and now I am setting up the cursor into the middle of this sphere so that I can add a force into the center of it. And so it's kind of like adding a shape, but now I just add a force. And then I pretty much do the same things. I just mess with the settings of the force and see what I like. So here things are getting pretty slow because of all the particles, so I switch to the preview that doesn't involve any rendering. So as you can see, tweaking with the particle settings can create some pretty odd effects. So it's fun just to kind of mess around, and it's hard to predict exactly what you're going to get. So at this point I thought it might be fun. I had some orange particles. I thought, okay, let's try adding some blue particles. So I pretty much did the same thing I did with the orange sphere, but now I'm doing it with a blue one. Here I am once again previewing the image with a render. And now I tweak things some more until I find something I like. Now that I got the particles doing pretty much what I want, now I'm creating the title for Parallel Disney. And because this is just showing what I did, I only used Parallel and I didn't add Disney. Sorry. Something good to know that I actually had to go on YouTube to find out is that to change the text, you have to be in edit mode. And you can switch between edit mode and object mode just by pressing tab. Once I got the text, then I just have to position and size it how I want. To add some depth and solidity to the text, you can just go to geometry and then extrude it with this little tab. So because I'm going to need to use some specific constraints, I need to turn the text into a mesh, and that gives me some more options that I can use. the portal was looking a little too thin, so I made it a little thicker. So now I try to line up the text with the portal to sort of make this fun effect happen. Alright, for the next fun part of this effect is going to require 3 parallels that are parallel. Well, they're identical and they're on top of each other. So I create a duplicate. Now that I have a duplicate, I'm going to add constraints to it so that no matter what I do to text or parallel, text 001 will do the exact same thing, at least when it comes to rotation, location, and scale. For the next fun effect feature, I'm going to need a sphere, but any object will do. So in the object options, I switch it to wire, that way I can see through it. I then scale it and position it to where I need it. I then duplicate it and put it on the other side of the portal. I then make another duplicate, but this time I do the duplicate of text 001, that way it has the same constraints, and I don't have to worry about adding them again. Now I am adding a shader to text, and I'm giving it an orange color. I then give the same color to text 001. And then I give a blue color to text 002. Now I'm going to add a modifier to text 002, and I'm going to use the Boolean modifier. And this kind of creates a fun mask effect. I then use the teardropper and I select the sphere where I want it to be unseen. So now by doing this, you won't be able to see the blue on top of the other layers, but you will be able to see the orange, at least when parallel is in this sphere. Here I move parallel into the center of the portal, and you can see that when text is selected, you can see it all, but when I select 2, only half of it is selected. I then add the same modifier to text. However, this time I do it with the other sphere. I then move text 001 into collection 2, that way it's in the other side layer, so it'll still be showing even when the portal is masked. I then go to the spheres and then I click on the visibility and then I unclick the show in render. So when looking at the render, I saw that parallel on the right side of the sphere had a blue-orange mix, and that was because collection 2 was still visible on the view layer, so I had to deselect that. Alright, everything was looking good. Now I wanted to animate it and the camera. So to make the camera positioning a little bit more easily, I added some constraints to it. First, I locked the distance with a limit distant constraint. That way, the camera would sort of rock around the portal in a perfect circle, however I moved it. Here I saw that parallel took up the entire frame, so I went ahead and made it smaller. I then added a damped track to the camera, and this constraint made it so that the camera would always point at the portal. After clicking through the axis options, -Z turned out to be the one that worked. So now I'm pretty much able to move the camera left and right, and it'll always be facing the sphere, and it'll always be the same distance away. Alright, then I set up keyframes to animate the motion of the camera. Now that the camera is doing what I wanted, I go ahead and animate the text. The particles were looking a little funny, so I went ahead and adjusted those. Alright, now that everything seems to be pretty set, I bake the particle effects, and then I go ahead and just set the animation to only do every 10 frames. That way I can kind of get a rough look at the animation and see if anything's wrong without actually having to sit through and render all the frames. After rendering every 10th frame, this is what I got. Well, that's the gist of how I did what I did, and now without further ado, let me show you my final product. At least final for now. Well, if you made it this far in the video, I hope you enjoyed it. I know this is a different kind of video, so I'm also going ahead and throwing in another one of my personal videos from Tokyo Disneyland. It's great footage, actually won one of the lotteries to get the viewing for this nighttime spectacular, so definitely check it out. And until next time.